no money, that's an asshole. It wasn't a phase.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Senior Citizen Podcast, and now we're here with Dominic Delaney.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm really happy you came out. I'm doing well. Yeah, it's not a secret. We record all these in the same day, and the shake is a lot.
Yeah.
They shook me up.
Yeah, that's what they'll do.
Yeah. I'm going to start from there. I want to know how, you became their tour manager, why you choose to hang out with them.
Yeah. That's a valid question, a very valid question. So I met Ricky over the course of during the lockdown era of the pandemic. Ricky was running a virtual music festival called the Social Distance Festival, and he had asked me to perform on it, which I was thrilled to do. It was lockdown; we had nothing to do, and so I was really excited to do that. And we started talking about just mutual interest in different bands and stuff. One of the big musical influences for me is Frank Turner, and Ricky knew who that was, and so we became quick friends.
I was about to say, I don't know who that is.
And that's completely fair. But he's an English songwriter that I really enjoy, and Ricky knew who that was. And then he said the magic words that every songwriter wants to hear, which is, I also play drums. And that was great. And lockdown continued to happen for, the next year or so, and we didn't really meet in person for about a year of our friendship. And then we met at our practice space that we still have. And at the time, I was still a bit of a mess. Lockdown kind of had its effect on me when it came to substance abuse and things like that. So I wasn't necessarily in the best condition when we started practicing and jamming. Mm-hmm. And I had to figure that out. But afterwards, Ricky was still there and like, hey, so we're still doing this, right? And that was great. So he was drumming for me, and around that time he was like, I'm starting this project called The Shake, where I play guitar and I sing. I was like, that's awesome, that's amazing. And from there it was kind of just, we kept playing shows together, and I've always been a road dog, as they call them, and I prefer to be on the road on tour. I feel like I exist better in that capacity than I do, in a normal go home type of thing. And so when they wanted to tour, that was one of the first tours I attempted as a full band, but at the time I was still a bit of a drunken mess, and so that tour went very badly. And then I went, got myself all fixed up, came back, and when Two Ported Tour came up, I was already doing kind of some touring on my own. But I told them, I was like, hey, let's go back to working together. And the tour managing thing just kind of came with that territory of, at the time, I was still, the acoustic opener type of thing, which I didn't mind being. But the tour managing kind of added an extra bit of responsibility to that. And I do have the experience of booking tours and things like that. So bringing that to an organization like The Shake, where they are very meticulous about the gear they use and the way they sound, and the show is the most important thing. And so they needed somebody who could let them do that and go worry about the other things, like asking the sound guy to, kick the opener act off or stuff like that, things like that, things that can kind of be a bridge between venue staff and band. And then just on the road, the day-to-day stuff of where we got to be when, how long our travel times are, stuff like that.
The logistics.
Yeah, and that type of stuff I'm pretty good at. I've done a fair amount of touring completely solo, where it's just me having to handle everything. So when I'm touring with them, and there's some responsibility taken off me, like Ricky is a very organized person, which helps out a lot. It just makes it all easier for everybody, and that's where everybody starts to kind of have the role in the touring party, and that's where I'm technically not a member of The Shake, but when it comes to the touring parties,
you're an honorary member.
Yeah, so well, thank you. And it's all just about what keeps the tour moving. Everybody's got their responsibilities and their strengths, and one of my strengths happens to be booking and managing tours.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I think the magic words of I'm a drummer also comes along with I have my own drum set.
Yes.
Because I have people complaining about how, there's drummers, but they don't have drum sets.
Right, or somewhere to play them.
Right.
Yeah, no. That was another big thing, it was, hey, come down to our practice spot. And that kind of being like, okay, well, if this is something that you want to commit your time to, we can be here every Tuesday at 8 p.m., you know, that type of thing. So, Ricky's been a huge help, you know, just when it comes to my songs. At the time when I had met Ricky, I'd played with a couple drummers and a couple other, you know, a couple different, I guess you would call them session musicians. But I never really had that band that I felt confident enough to kind of be like, hey, let's try this new idea type of thing. So it was always bringing things that I already had, these acoustic songs, and being like, these are how the songs are played. I need you to play behind it. And it just wasn't the fun dynamic. It became a lot more work, and that's when, for a long time, it was just easier to just be like, you know what, I'll grab my acoustic guitar, go on the road, and just play these songs by myself.
Right.
It was a lot easier for a long time to do it that way, but now with Ricky kind of having, you know, he's a musically literate person, whereas like I can't read music. A lot of the times people be like, "Well, what chord are you playing?" And like, I don't know. My hand's here and it sounds like this.
Right. Yeah, when he was when he mentioned that he was listening to, like, I think it was pop punk, and he was like, "Oh, this is so easy, I could do this," and I was like, "Yeah, you like."
Right. You know, and that's where he's a very a well-versed musician. He understands, you know, the intricacies that I never studied or learned or was taught. And for me, like, songwriting has always just been my, you know, I guess you can call it a form of like public therapy, a way to talk to myself maybe, you know, and that's how it's always been for me. It's been, I know these chords, I have these words, and I'm going to do this until it fits, and that's how I get my songs. And but Ricky can kind of be that voice now, especially in the recording process, where he's kind of like, I think you need to spread this out, or you need to, you know, add another measure here, that type of stuff. So he helps bring those songs into the full band arrangements that they are now, you know, where we can have circle pits and running around and all that stuff.
And hit each other.
Exactly.
And two-step out here.
Yeah, 100%.
So, okay. So you're not super professionally musically literate, let's say.
I can't read sheet music.
Right.
You know, I know what chords I'm playing most of the time.
Right. It just sounds good though. You have an ear for it.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, just hanging out with these guys, you know, being on tour with the Shake and touring with some of the other bands I've toured with. You know, you just by nature you learn.
Yeah.
You know, you become better. And I was having this conversation the other day where I look back at, I do a thing where I count every show that I play.
I was gonna ask about that because you're on number like 400.
So last night, or what's today? Sunday. 2 nights ago was 394, and that was for my birthday. But I vividly remember the single-digit shows, and
wow.
And you know, at the time, I was definitely in my early 20s. I enjoyed whiskey and long nights, and you know, looking back at those shows, I do question how good they really were, you know, because I know for a fact that I've improved as a musician, as a writer over the past 5 years I've been doing this. You know, and it's certainly not to discredit those early shows, but it is an awareness that there's been improvement, which I think is a good thing. I think I'd probably get, you know, bored if I wasn't still improving.
Right. And I mean, improving isn't always linear either. Like,
right, yeah.
There might be some shows in the beginning that's like, wow, that was the best. And then in the hundreds, it's like, could have done better.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, with the milestone shows, you know, the 100 shows, people tend to pay more attention when we start getting close to the 100 shows. For the majority of the meat of those shows, which is like the 05s to like the 90s, those shows are kind of, people are like, oh, that's interesting. But then when it gets to the 100 shows, they're like, where's 400 gonna be, man? You know, that type of thing, which is fun. This will be, 400 is scheduled already. I have a couple tours coming for the rest of the year. 400 right now looks like it's going to be in a place called Ridgeville, South Carolina, which is outside of Charleston. That'll be on a tour that I'm doing with Andy Styron, who's another singer-songwriter from down here. We're leaving the 6th of October. And
you genuinely love being on the road.
If I could be on the road 13 months out of the year, I would. You know, it's a very fun way to exist. You know, I understand at our level of touring, it's definitely different than, you know, say, you know, Taylor Swift's 18 bus tour or whatever it is. You know, there's
that she
different
flies on a plane every night.
Right. And then there's, you know, there's some musicians who get to a certain level when it comes to touring that there's a little bit of complaining about it, like, oh, I'm on the road, and like, it is hard. It's hard to be able, like, I'm a married guy, like, I miss my wife and my cats and stuff, you know, it's tough. But I haven't gotten to that point in touring yet where I've complained about it. And to me, it you know, Ricky said it on his episode here, where we have the best job in the world.
Yeah.
And specifically, you know, being on the road, you know, we did the RV tour last year, and that was great. And the cool thing about the RV was kind of you woke up every morning and you went outside and you were like, where the fuck are we?
Right.
You know. And
but people are built so differently, because if I wake up on an RV and I come out and I'm like, where the fuck am I today, I'm not happy. Like, I don't deal well with change or traveling or anything. Like, I like staying put. I'm a creature of habit.
That's how my wife is as well.
I'm a regular at so many restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. That's where my wife would be like, Chick-fil-A is going to be wondering where I am.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, and I sit down and it's like, oh, do you want to try something new today? Absolutely.
Right. And that's where, you know, it's something that I really like. Like, one of the funniest moments, and I think it just aired recently in our Porta Tour documentary, was we were on our way to Philadelphia, and I popped out of the RV at a gas station, and, you know, I collect stickers from places and stick them on my guitar case. And I asked the gas station lady, I was like, hey, do you have any Philadelphia stickers? And she goes, we're in Maryland.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh. There's like one guy behind us who's like, you're a long way from Philly, pal. And just roasting me in this gas station. But yeah, it's a way of living that I enjoy. I really enjoy seeing, you know, the country. I've played in 23 out of 50 states. I'll be at more than half the country by the end of the year. And that's another thing that I kind of meticulously keep track of.
Do you organize all these in like an Excel, like all the show numbers?
So there is a master list. There on my website. There is the master list that goes from show 1 to present day. But I've been so paranoid because like I have the master list on my website. I have on Instagram. I believe I started all the way back at show number 1. You can go and find every show gets a picture. But I'm so paranoid that the internet is going to collapse one day and we're going to be left in this like Armageddon world that I do have a hard copy of the list, and it's kept under like a lock and key.
Oh my god!
And yeah, it's borderline psychotic, but
it's like with your passport and everything just locked.
Yeah, exactly. It's in a little cash box. I have the key on my thing, and I'll probably add. I do them in like bunches of 15. You know, I'll add 15 shows and then I lock it back up and go back 15 shows later, you know.
That's insane.
It's something that you know, it's something that I take pride in, but I don't want to, you know, take too much pride in, because like if you look back at like the blues musicians of, you know, the 20s and stuff, or you know, like if you look all the way back to like Robert Johnson or even like B.B. King and those guys are playing hundreds of shows a year. I mean, like multiple shows a day. So it's not like some people ask if it's like a competitive thing or if I'm racing to some certain number. No. And it's more for me. I like to keep track. Yeah. I like to be able to look back. Like I know where all the hundreds were. I know that 100 was at a coffee shop in Delray. 200 was a virtual benefit for Prop. 300 was at Prop. And yeah, it's a cool way for me to kind of keep track of where I've been. Certain people will come up if I haven't met them before. They'll be like, "Oh, we were at show number 53," you know, or something like that, and that's always kind of cool.
I love how it's numbered.
Yeah.
Usually you're like, "Oh, I was at the show at this place," and then if you've played there so many times, it's like, when?
Yeah.
You have an actual like number to associate with it.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I should say, it's definitely not an original idea. It is something that I borrowed from Frank Turner, because he counts his shows. He's up in the thousands already. I mean, he's been doing it for for 2 decades, you know. But it was something that I really liked, and Frank was a big reason that I kind of dove into the touring aspect of being a musician, because I was watching an interview with him, and I've met him a couple times and had the luxury of talking with him, and he just said, if you want a tour, go book one. And I just remember being like, you can do that? And he was like, yeah. He's like, and that's where nowadays, like, we booked our November tour with the Shake, and we're working on a couple things for next year already. And it used to be like me and Ricky kind of handled the majority of the booking. And when it came to the Porta Tour, I mean, I was sending 200 emails a day.
Yeah.
And getting 0 responses. But you know, that's the game. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a numbers game, and it's finding the right people who want to help out and do, you know, something that aligns with the values that we have as a DIY ethos sort of punk band. And now it's at a point where, you know, we were talking about some tours that we're doing next year, and it was just like, oh, who do we email? I was like, oh, we're going back to a lot of these places. We'll just text our homies that we met last time, you know, and making those connections around the country. It's been amazing, and you know, that's Like this year I did the Amtrak tours, which I've done 2 of them so far. There is a final one next year. But I did the Northeast all by train, where I did New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, and Massachusetts, all taking the Amtrak train to the States. And then I did it on the West Coast, where I went all the way from Anaheim to Los Angeles to Redding, California, to Portland, Oregon, to Tacoma, Washington, Seattle, Washington, and then all the way up into Vancouver for my first international show in Canada. And that was another thing where it was just an idea of, I think I could do this physically. I think I can handle it. And financially, traveling by train actually became
cheaper,
very well. I mean, like my train from Rhode Island to Boston, I think was $7.
Oh, wow.
It was ridiculous. And it was a cool idea, and it was a really cool way to see the country. I am working on a book about some of the crazy things I saw. Like I saw a naked person running in LA, which I was like, oh, this is LA. Vancouver, I may have forgot some herbal things in my backpack when I was crossing the border that they were not giant fans of. But I wrote a song about it, so it's all good. And I didn't get arrested. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to be on the road.
I think the highlight is not getting arrested.
Yeah, well, I think I kind of played like the dumb American role, where I kind of was like, oh, I didn't know you couldn't bring that. And they're like, well, it's weed, man. You can't bring it into the country. I was like, oh, I'm American, football. And they're just like, just fucking go.
Oh, man.
They were a little more invasive than I expected, to the point where the lady she searched my bag. And I am the biggest bitch when it comes to cops, or at least Mounties. Like they asked her, like, do you have weed? Yes. Absolutely, it's right here, I will show you. But then they started really grilling me, and they're like, we want to see your bank accounts, and we want to see, because now the issue didn't become the weed, the issue became why I was in the country. And at our level, I think I can say this without getting arrested. At our level, or my level, getting any sort of visa isn't really doable. Or at least makes it, just a complete financial loss. Right. So I didn't get any sort of work visa or anything. It was just gonna sneak into the country, play a show, sneak back out the next day, and try and make out with my money. And they are not giant fans of that. And they wanted to check all my bank accounts and make sure that I had enough money to technically be in the country without working and make it back. But
that shit's scary.
But I was shaking, and I'm trying to open up my bank accounts, but then I remember, I'm like, we've just crossed the Canadian border. I don't have phone service anymore. And so my things won't load, and I can't show this Mountie lady anything, and she's getting frustrated at this point. To the point where I think the frustration helped me, because she was just kind of like, just go. Just get out of my sight.
Right.
And I didn't even hesitate. Didn't even zip my bag up. Just grabbed it. Thank you, ma'am. Turned around. And I always think back to like there was a drug dog, and I always think back to the drug dog because he was on me right when I opened that door and walked into the customs thing. He was on me, on my bag. You gotta imagine that when they let me go, the dog's just there like,
what do I work for, dude?
I told you, dude. Like, what do you mean? But yeah, so they let me go with that. But that's where there were a lot of interesting stories that happened on the Amtrak tour.
No, I can imagine.
I'm excited to tell.
We're gonna get Dominic Delaney at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
What's like so you're obviously counting every show. Mm-hmm. If you could play anywhere for like your 1,000th show, like what is that dream venue or state or place? So
I actually brought this question up the other day at our practice space, where kind of I have this like tick, I think, where I always ask weird questions. One of my weird ones is, would you rather be stuck in a submarine underwater or a spaceship in space?
Spaceship.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. There is no right answer. But
no, there's not. But my biggest fear is death by drowning. So even like just water, ocean, no.
Yeah.
Send me
fair
up.
Fair enough. But yeah, so like I'll ask like weird questions like that. And one of them the other day was dream venues, and that's where Ricky's was like Madison Square Garden, which that's a pretty tough one to beat. For me, being I'm a diehard Pittsburgh Penguins hockey fan. And so PPG Paints Arena, which is their arena, would be really cool. They used to play in a place called Mellon Arena that I believe they've demolished since then. That would have been a big one.
You can go play on the scraps.
Yeah. Just like, or I'll just have them send me a slab of concrete and I'll just stand on it. But yeah, I mean, we've also had multiple conversations, me and the Shake and other people, just about the context of how important the venue necessarily is to your show. Obviously there's the places like we played a place that has since had some controversy, but at the time, we weren't aware of anything. But Dobbs in Philadelphia, Nirvana played there and Pearl Jam played there and stuff like that. And those are always kind of cool when you get those places. You'll play. I played a place called Pete's Candy Store in Brooklyn that like Frank Turner's played, Regina Spektor's played, Loudon Wainwright, like some really amazing people. Those are always kind of cool spots, but at the same time, I think it comes down more to the people at the show that's more important. How
many Claires you got at the show?
I'm sorry?
How many Claires you got at the show?
Claires, exactly. Yeah. We need all the Claires.
Right.
That's where, I agree with the Shake when it comes to Claire, because I remember that night very well, because I had flown into New Orleans to meet up with them for that tour. And, Claire has almost become like a fictional character where she can represent just the best of the music scenes, and her being at that show by chance and then loving us so hard. Ricky's right behind the camera being a fucking creep. That's what she fell in love with, though, was looking at that guy and being like, this is the band that I'm going to devote my night to, and told all our buddies about it. So the Claires of the music scene are the most important people, because I feel like they're the most open to the new music. They want music that is new but still speaks to them, or they could find some sort of relative meaning to. But yeah, I think that's where it comes down to. I've had some of my best shows to 2 people in really crappy venues, but you do have the good ones every now and again at a nice venue with a packed crowd. Those are always very fun.
Yeah, hopefully it's one of those things where like the 3 can exist in harmony.
Yeah,
like I have a good venue, a good crowd, and nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, and it's something too that I think I kind of, one of the parallels between me and the Shake is I can kind of my show can be scaled to fit the venue. Whether that be an acoustic performance, a full band performance, or even a full band performance with extra people. It can be made to be as small or big as it needs to be, and that was kind of always the goal. The whole thing about being like a solo artist wasn't done with the intent of this is going to make my career so much easier. It was mainly done with the intent of I don't have anybody to play these songs with. But now at this point, 5 years later, it does help to sometimes be versatile in that way where, it's expensive to take a band out on the road. It's a lot less expensive for one idiot with a guitar to hop on the train and make a tour out of it.
Right. And I love the advice that Frank Turner gave you, that if you want to do a tour, just do it. Because it's one of those things that, like, you don't know why you feel like you have barriers around what you want to do. It's like, I am in full capacity of just going out and doing whatever I want.
Yeah, and it goes to something that I know that I vehemently disagree with, which is the gatekeeping of those types of connections in your scene and elsewhere. That's where there's bands that come on the road to Florida, and there's not a lot of bands that tour to Florida simply because it's a nightmare to get in and get out of, especially how south we are. So when a band does come, especially a smaller band, independent band comes, we try and make that connection and be like, hey, where are you from? Where are you going? What do you need?
Or even bands around here, if they tell you, hey, I'm going to North Carolina, where can I play? You're not going to gatekeep the information. Like, oh, hey, I played at this venue and that venue.
Right. And that's where, sometimes you tell them the great experiences you've had. Sometimes you tell them the bad experiences you've had. Yeah. Like, on the last West Coast Amtrak tour, those shows were some of the most amazing solo shows I've ever had. Busy venues, good merch sales, the type of thing that really makes a DIY tour doable. But there was the one anomaly on that tour, which was Portland, Oregon. And this is nothing against Portland, Oregon, or the people that are in that music scene.
Oh, it's directly against you, Portland, Oregon.
But you guys didn't come to my show. And, it was just tough. And the musicians that were on the bill were very talented. But it just didn't work. And so next time that I try Portland, Oregon, or somewhere else in Oregon, I have to reevaluate, what did I do wrong? Did I work with the wrong people? Did was the venue the wrong spot? All that type of stuff. But that's where it's always just learning and adapting and trying to figure out.
Trial and error of just figuring it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's never gonna not be error. There will always be error, and it's it's one of the reasons I love touring with the Shake is we're kind of proven when it comes to adaptability. We've had quite a few tours where we've had canceled shows we've had to replace, or an RV breaking down. We've dealt with our fair share.
I saw up to there was like 20 something. I saw up to where the RV like completely broke down.
So that was in Philadelphia. That was probably in the top 3 most terrifying nights of my life.
Yeah. And then the cop coming by and what are y'all doing?
So he was working at that station. Philadelphia is sketchy enough that they were like, hey, this guy's got to be here 24/7. And he, luckily enough, he went to Lincoln Tech, which I guess is a mechanic school, and he knew a little bit about what we were trying to fix. And, but yeah, I mean, it's just those things where when we leave home, we're prepared for everything to go wrong. And it has sometimes, and luckily we're able to kind of adapt. I am touring, like, for instance, with Andy Styron on this acoustic tour that we're leaving for. I guess if this comes out the 7th or what, or 14th. So we're on tour right now. We are actually in Gainesville this second. So come to Gainesville. We are going to be at Civic Media Center.
Oh, awesome.
But that's where Andy kind of approached me and said, I want to tour. I know that you like to do that. Can you help me? And I've known Andy for years and we're good friends. So, I kind of showed her how I book tours, how the research of where you want to play is, because it's one of the biggest things. My biggest piece of advice would be for people who want to tour is small cap venues are the best. If you get a venue that's a 50 cap venue, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. You actually have a chance of selling that out. If you are a relatively unknown artist and for some reason you got 1,000 cap venue, you're going to have a bad night.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, there's also the illusion of tour being just like one long party. I guess maybe for some people it is. For at least for me and the Shake, I know like Ricky and I don't drink. Akila doesn't really drink for his health reasons, and Joe just kind of, I think he's scared of the taste of alcohol. And
he's also like
he's underage, yeah. So he's underage. But we're not really hard partiers. I mean, like we'll stay out late and we stay up late playing poker and that type of thing. But
everyone has their own version of a fun night, and drinking and partying and whatever isn't always in the description.
Right, and I certainly had plenty of that when I was younger. Some of the first tours I did were almost comically bad. The first tour I ever did was in 2018. My buddy stole a Honda Civic from his drug dealer, and then the registration was expired. We took that thing all the way up to South Bend, Indiana, and back, and somehow didn't get arrested. And we got stopped by cops in Louisville, which I was also taught how to say. It's not Louisville. The guy said, give up saying it halfway through. It's Louisville. And
you learn something new every day.
Yeah, right? But
they'll correct you quick.
Yeah, they will. Well, so we had a situation where we parked at the venue, and we backed into the spot, and that night, that tour was in the middle of the winter of 2018, and we were sleeping in the Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And so pretty much our nightly ritual was show ends, we go drink at the bar, get in the car, put Batman on, and fall asleep in the car, wake up, go to the next city. I wake up to this Spanish Louisville cop pulling me out of the car, screaming at me like, we almost Narcaned you. And I was like, why? I was sleeping. And I looked, they got my buddy Preston in handcuffs on the back of the car at like gunpoint. And I'm like, what is happening here? Didn't realize that when we backed into our space to sleep, we were facing the drive-through of a pharmacy. So it kind of looked like we were like just scoping the place out.
Right.
And I guess when Preston saw the cops drive by, he went to wake me up and they thought he was reaching for something. So they pulled him out of the car. Search of the car, registration's expired, there's some weed in the car, open containers, bunch of things that, like, I was convinced. I was like, okay, so this is it. Like, we're going to jail. I'll call my wife. It's going to suck. But then the cop kind of looks at us. He looks at all the things that we have, and he's like, so you're going to Nashville tomorrow? You're a touring musician? I was like, yes, sir. We got to be in Nashville by, like, noon tomorrow. He's like, all right, sleep it off. When you wake up, get the fuck out of my town. I was like, yes, sir, not a problem. I'll never come back to this city. You got it. And that was my experience in Kentucky. I've not been back since.
I wouldn't go back. I think that's enough to scar. Props to your wife for dealing with this.
Oh, man.
'Cause I'm sure she knows all these stories. And she's like, oh, he's going to be gone one day.
Yeah, there was, I got lost in Key West once on a bunch of acid in a Leprechaun onesie that didn't have any pockets. So I didn't have like a phone or anything.
No.
I found this very nice group of sorority girls to call my wife and help me get matched back up with my buddy, who was the same friend, of course. But yeah, these days it's more like, hey, I just lost in poker.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a little simpler. But me and my wife, we've been married. We've been together for over 10 years.
That's
We're high school sweethearts, and she's definitely seen the lows of the low. I mean, these days the highs are a lot more often, but it wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
There was a lot of compromise that had to happen when it came to this type of lifestyle of kind of always being gone. It does make a relationship tougher, and
100%.
there's definitely things that we've had to work on, both just in our relationship and things that I've had to work on myself, to kind of to make this work. But she's been the most supportive person. She's my best friend, and is every show. We just retired one of my more popular songs the other night, and it was weird. It's a funny song about how I broke my finger, but it was weird. Like it was almost emotional for us to kind of say goodbye to this song that's been played for the past 5 years and has done a lot for us.
Well, you sound like a relationship guy.
Yeah, I am. I'm a bit of a romantic man. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
No, similarly though, I'm still with my high school sweetheart too, and
it's great.
Works.
And that's where there's what was it that last person said? There's rocky days. There are a lot of rocky days.
Yeah, but I know his family, so we're good.
Well, there you go.
All right. My boyfriend, who's a 24-year-old male, got mad at me, a 22-year-old female, for staring at a luxury car. On Friday morning, we both went to the gym to work out. Everything went fine, and once we arrived at my job place to drop me off, we hop off the car and started talking on the sidewalk. At some point, a luxurious car appears. For context, we live in a very small town, so it's not normal to see these kinds of cars, so they're not on Miami Beach. I said, hey, look, that's a nice car, and kept staring at it because I was nosy, and I just wanted to see who was driving it. He told me, if there's a man in there, you'd probably hop into the car. And I said, no, I just wanted to know if that car belonged to the Chinese family I mentioned to you before. The comment hurt, but I let it pass. Hours go on. After the boyfriend left, everything seemed fine, but at some point, he messaged her saying that what she did was very low. That he understands that I come from a wealthy family and probably wants a partner with status, but that he's not that kind of man. Called her a self-centered gold digger and not a humble woman, and that she'd probably go for a wealthy man given the chance. Apparently he's not poor either. They just don't have a luxury car.
Oh, man. Well, I think...
how do I get over this? That's her question.
How did you get over this?
Dump his ass.
Yeah, where's the goddamn button? I think, when it comes to me, this is a glaring example of the insecurity of her man. I don't know about how qualified I am to give relationship advice, but what I would say is that there's ways that you can address insecurities in your relationship that don't have to be finger pointing or laying blame on someone. It doesn't have to be like, you did this because you're this type of person and you wanted to make me feel this way.
Right.
Because most of the time that's not the case at all. That's something that me and my wife, we have a pretty open line of communication when it comes to things like that. There's times where it's been like, hey, like, you haven't called me for 3 days on the road. Like, what the fuck is happening with you?
That'd be way over for me.
That's where I'm like, oh,
3
shit, my bad, But that's where, all relationships are compromised. And if this is something that guy can't get over, dump his ass.
It's a serious lack of immaturity.
Yeah.
From what I'm looking at. Yeah. I mean, it's what he said is pretty hurtful too. I mean, everybody's different. Like, if my boyfriend texted me and said you're a gold digger, I'd be like, yeah. But
like, glad you're catching on, man.
No, I'm kidding. But I wouldn't. Yeah, it's something very hurtful to say.
Well, yeah,
so,
it's
yeah,
definitely it's definitely you have been hurt, so you are now saying words in the hopes that they hurt.
Exactly.
You know, and that's where fucking two broken pieces of wood don't make a house or something like that. I think that's a phrase. We're gonna make it a phrase.
It's a phrase now.
T-shirt idea now.
I would get that T-shirt. Saw a guy with a T-shirt that says "Live with what you can afford," and I'm like, absolutely not. I like your T-shirt better. Anyways, it's your shameless plug moment, Dominic. Anything you want to plug in? And if it's not if you don't shout out your wife, I swear to God.
Yeah, I'm gonna plug my wife and my cats. They shop at Costco because that's where she works, and I'm gonna plug my wife, and you guys can't be there for that. No, but then after that, after plugging my wife, I'm gonna going on tour October 6th to the 15th with Andy Styron. That's gonna be an acoustic tour. We've got a couple Florida dates, but we're also gonna be in Athens, Georgia, Ridgeville, South Carolina, Birmingham, Alabama, and Pascagoula, Mississippi. You're the second person that's giving me that look when I've said Pascagoula. Pascagoula, I hope you guys are cool, man. And then after that, I'm home for a couple weeks, more plugging the wife, and then back on the road with the Shake in November for a full band tour where we are going all the way up to Portland, Maine in the dead of winter. Ricky incorrectly said that Portland will be in November. It'll be December by then. And that is a sold-out show already, too. We have a sold-out show in Portland, Maine with this band, Sophomore Beat. And, looking forward to being on the road the rest of this year and then coming home for the holidays and then going right back out for 2024.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the Shake. We will try to catch you at some South Florida shows because, as I mentioned, I'm not traveling.
Fair enough.
And, yeah, we'll catch you guys next time on the Senior Citizen Podcast.